Welcome back. This is Chicken Philosophy. I'm your host, Edward, and this is a special episode. I'm not going to be reading any of the usual stuff that I've been reading lately. Instead, I am going to read this entire book. This is Transformations by John Dan Reib, because today is March 6th, 2024. And it's my dad's birthday. My dad is John Dan Reib. I'm Edward Charles Reib. My dad named me Edward after his wife's dad. Kind of a slick move if you're thinking about what to name your kid. Suggesting to your wife that he be named after her dad, especially if she loves her dad. But also, he had an uncle named Charles Edward Reib, so he was thinking Edward Charles Reib that way. Anyway, so that's how I got that name, Edward. And then later, after he died, when I was 15, I joined the Golden Dawn, one of them. Not the Greek political party, the Victorian-style magical order. The one Yeats was a part of. Anyway, they gave me the name Ben Tiferet, or BT. And 20 years later, I started the Esoteric Nerd podcast. And I think it was on episode 18 of the Esoteric Nerd podcast, I began reciting transformations. He divided it into chapters and verses, so I read chapter 1, verse 1 of Transformations in episode 18, and then I began reciting a verse now and then in an episode, and then I'd read 2 verses in an episode, then eventually 3 and 5, and so on. And so that's going to save me some time today for reciting, but poor editor Edward is going to be doing a lot of work today, but that's okay. So what this is going to be, if you haven't already figured it out, is it's going to be all of those recitals edited together real nice. And the first lots, for a long time, Esoteric Nerd podcast. By the way, those who watch Chicken Philosophy, and sometimes you see me wearing this big colorful thing and a yarmulke, and you're like, what the fuck is this? That, maybe sometimes you say, oh, well, he's from Esoteric Nerd podcast. Yeah, that's a thing. That's BT, as in Ben Tiferet. Things fitting together now. So basically, what you're going to see for the audio-only ones is the image, the square image, for those seeing, for the audio-only folks. I'll get to you guys. I mean, don't worry, I haven't forgotten you. I'll try not to bore you to death right now. But anyway, it'll be fun for you, too. It'll be fine. I'm just talking to the other people right now. Anyway, back to you. Yes, so for the audio-only episodes, you'll see the square image that's associated with the episode of the Esoteric Nerd podcast that the recital is from, as well as at the top you'll see a number, and that's the number of the episode. So if you see like some author or someone or a friend of yours and you're like, what? Who? I want to listen to the rest of that interview, then you can click here and go to the Esoteric Nerd podcast, or search for Esoteric Nerd podcast, it's spelled like it sounds, and go to that episode number. And then at a certain point, they're video episodes, and then you'll actually see me reciting, and then eventually you'll come back to me sitting here now, and I'll finish the recital. So anyway, I could say a lot about my dad. My great-grandparents had this, Christ is the unseen guest at every meal, and the unseen host, or the unseen person, he's always here, you just can't see him. I could say the same about my dad on Chicken Philosophy. You've heard me talk about him before if you've watched this show before, or if you've seen me on Esoteric Nerd or anything else. So there isn't really much that I can say about my dad that I haven't already said somewhere. And I don't want to make this introduction any longer than it needs to be. So, therefore, I will go ahead and say, let's get to that entire recital, the reading of Transformations by John Dan Reib. Go.
Transformations by John Dan Reib, 1976. Chapter 1, verse 1. I saw the rainbow star sky, not with my earth eyes, with my brain fire, that is itself a star. Deep light spears faceting from suns and stars, and dark blue space dancing through high mountain air. I rose a light cloud of no particular shape toward the sky home, above green earth mountains, and the cities, rock frozen, flesh frozen, and suddenly it was all white light. They came from the white light to me in the white light. They messaged my lives to me, and the paths I had walked and would walk. They messaged love in rainbows, and dark music, light-shattering sky foam, like space soap. The sky was orange, then deep blue, and the mountains were beneath me. Flesh people often call them saints and devils and gods. I call them friends. They messaged voices and tastes and smells and images and worlds and words and screeching sounds and the songs of the great whales in the sea, our brothers and sisters. Verse 2. Coming back to the flesh place is like walking through a roar of devouring electric teeth, wind tunneling, egg-beatering, vortexing, and the stars whirl down, and the yellow light and white light make whirligig rainbows that turn gray and cloudy, even almost smoky, in night-bed darkness. And my flesh place, the body, is below me. I take its shape. I become its shape. I pretend dreams and create plots and people them with problems and confusions, intrusions, conflicts, resolutions. It all becomes very intense and totally significant beyond words as I experience it and wake up at 5:30 in the a.m. to some talk show on the radio, exchanging make-wrongs and playing Ain't It Awful, and blaming Nixon, Ford, Uncle Ho, Mao, Castro, religion, no religion, with no viable solution or taking of responsibility evident. Verse 3. It's so sane in the white light. They message so much. I message so much. Back here in the flesh place, in the meathead brain that aches, I hear the beta body chattering, trying to give my soul significance and label it, making it supermarket available and palpable, even palatable. Weird wired make-wrongers on the radio, cranking out hanged man's hope and despair for the flesh place fear junkies, driving cars with smog chokers, complaining about pollution and natural resources dwindling, and demanding at the same time their rights to drive around in cars that seat 2.5, burn petrol like it will always be there in 400-horse engines on oversized tires, all of which takes about 12 tons of the finest Appalachian coal or its equivalent per unit to build, and can set the Cuyahoga River on fire at any time. I get dressed, wandering through the haze of consciousness here, to organize my awareness of the exactly how this world operates in comparison and contrast to all the others that I'm used to. When I stop worrying, I remember and forget where I put my glasses the night before, and cuss around the house, waking the others and allowing them to think that being human is an only. Verse 4. Flesh is inconvenient. Too much convenience is supposed to be boring. Anyhow, a lot of us are junkied on being here time and time again. It takes little wandering around and listening, even less reading, even less standing and watching, to see how many people who never think to ask out loud put reasons here for us to get stuck here. Verse 5. Here in the flesh they keep you, at any rate, by fascinating you with contrasts, such as amusement and boredom, and the sensory differentiation between experiences which you get to label painful and pleasurable, and find others to agree and disagree with you on what exactly is painable and pleasureful, all of which gives you opportunities to confuse the painable with the pleasureful, and make life tastes, which taste as different or the same as somebody else. And you get to make friends and enemies, breaking up the texture of the white light into egos and nations and states and cities and football teams and people who drive cars and people who beg carrying their children in wheelbarrows or on their backs, for whom you have a variety of options about how to feel, somewhere between something they call here guilt and something else they call contempt, and something else they call sorrow, and something a bit more they call caring, and something they label the opposite of that they call not caring. Verse 6. Sometimes you even get to think that your brain understands it. What really makes it entangling is when what you think is your understanding in the brain makes you talk and act in a way that pleases you and makes others give you agreement. Then you get to think you're winning and you really have it beat, and you may be in a life form, in something they call here a country, in something else they think is real and label a time, like a year counted after the gestat death and return of someone they refer to, most often unconsciously, as the personification of the Christ, and call it 1976. And the country might be something called, by general agreement, in a language which has split from other babblings amoeba-like and come to be called English, the United States. You might even get to live in something else they in the flesh place call a city, and be given lots of agreement in a form they call being wealthy, and do some things they label the good life or the sweet life, and then not enjoy it. Verse 7. I return to the white light very often. I cannot message to you exactly in noises or the print that makes itself significant by agreement predicated upon the replication of noises with agreed-upon significance. Messaging is something you cannot effort to remember how to do, because you already know inside you and outside you how to do it. It takes falling into or jumping through, and it is delightful to do it and not get put into the place the flesh place fear junkies call the madhouse. Unless, of course, you're one of the ones who find delight in being a denizen of the padded cell or a tidbit for the shocking coil. Verse 8. I suppose it would be of interest to you, my other being parts, who find delight in walking to and fro in the flesh place, gathering agreement harmony harvests, instead of incarceration gruel, to know how to message and stay free, as we here like to call it, you and I, and not get incarcerated. I shall create spaces in words for you to find for life dancing. Verse 9. Keeping the order of the confusion here is a game that keeps you free. The ones who get incarcerate are the ones who get stuck on seeing what they see and need to get the agreement of others that what they see there is as significant or more than what the flesh place has to offer. Some of these reach the madhouse because what they say is too logical, and some because what they say is too illogical. Give the flesh place fear junkies here space to create the feeling of having agreement,
by assent and image and nod, and playing in their pastimes, and earning your daily foodstuffs, and looking respectable. If you want to walk back and forth in the flesh place, this is keeping the order of the confusion. Verse 10. The more agreement you desire in the flesh place, the more you will have to make your assents, images, and nods give those trapped here kinds of assistance they can accept and want. When you put this into practice, you can walk to and fro in all worlds, and take the messagings from the white light to make rainbows of possibilities for those here. Verse 11. If you journey to the places beyond the flesh place, and you need to get agreement from those trapped here that your journeys are real, and you infringe upon their territory by trying to get them to believe you, then they will incarcerate you as a mad one, and you may make yourself mad. When you do this, you are doubting that you go to the other places. Either that, or you are starstruck by remembering, and by the fact that it is so obvious and easy that anyone could do it and know of it and come back to tell of it. This is the time to remember that those who are trapped in the flesh place are children playing hide and seek from their being awareness. They know, and they have pretended that they have forgotten that they know, till they actually have dizzied themselves and locked tight in their flesh place ego cocoons. It is for practical purposes here, as if they have really forgotten that they know. Verse 12. You and I get to keep in mind, if we would sustain freedom here and freedom in the elsewheres, that those flesh place fear junkies who play hide and seek, as we have before and appear to now, do so in a time continuum that can last many lifetimes. You and I know that it is Kali Yuga o'clock. They don't want to look at the cosmos clock. They don't want to look at or remember the agreements. They'd rather bang into them the hard way again and again. We know the agreements are obvious. They would rather not bother with remembering that. A wise one asked the morons, "Why do you keep banging your head against the agreements?" The morons chorused back, "Because it feels so good when we stop." Morons at Kali Yuga o'clock are those who've created forgetting how to stop. 13. Should we, you and I, tell them ever about the rings of fire? Should we, you and I, tell them how to see eggs dancing on the street? Should we, you and I, tell them that the river of death is a wide river between a desert and a forest, and that when one walks through the wall to the other side, one sees the river between the desert and the forest? Why should we bother? They already know. The cycle is complete. Verse 14. The fiery ones were here, as always, last night. So were Flesh Place visitors. The Flesh Place visitors complained of a chill in the room, and the heat was on. They verified that for themselves. They asked to hear records of meditation chanting from Tibet, and glimmered with curiosity, entrenched in pretending that Tibet is someplace different from here and there, and entrenched, likewise, in forgetting that they had lived there about 700 of what they call years ago. The fiery ones are really gentle and patient. I know that they look in on us for their reasons. I know what those reasons are. You know what those reasons are. The others also know, and want to pretend they don't know a bit more. Hide and seek is not fun in and of itself. They invest fun in hide and seek. Verse 15. The fun investments of flesh-place fear junkie hide and seekers lead them, from need to escape monotony, into creating contrasts which they enjoy not enjoying. Their capacity for creating what they call tragedy, significance, and violence appears at times virtually inexhaustible, doesn't it? The thing is that the cycle of their experience is complete, and it is limited, even as the exercise wheel of a hamster is complete and limited. Hamsters are simple in their needs. Flesh-place fear junkies, more complicated. Nevertheless, hamsters and flesh-place fear junkies both come from need. Verse 16. The thing is that sometimes you and I almost forget and act like them. We begin to operate from thinking of being human as an only. Then the lattices of the life wheel become Procrustean. That is not amusing after a while, is it? Verse 17. The white light is everywhere. It permeates all doctrines, even what those in the flesh place call truth and lies. This is what must be so, for the game they play in the flesh places to be interesting. The three tie pins of the flesh place world, then, are what they call irony, confusion, and paradox. They are also known by other names as form, distance, and time. From these three, many things are possible within the completed cycle of the flesh place. Verse 18. You and I both know, for instance, that it is possible for two flesh-place fear junkies, or even two mega-groups of flesh-place fear junkies, to be in total disagreement, each calling the other wrong, and for them both to be right about the other and right about themselves. This makes the game interesting, or at the very least, it makes it risky. Verse 19. It's very simple for flesh-place fear junkies to get stuck on darkness and hypnotize themselves into believing that it is light. What is not so obvious to flesh-place fear junkies is something else that is obvious to both you and me. It is equally possible for flesh-place fear junkies to get stuck on lights, to become enraged with others who are stuck on other lights they label different or darkness, and to make great darkness out of all the light. Flesh-place fear junkies are very powerful in places of flesh. They make traffic jams, getting stuck on lights, and create power failures they label grisly and or glamorous. They call these latter ones wars. This is another possibility created by the three tie pins. verse 20. Flesh place fear junkies also get to make lattices on their collective life wheel because of the 3 tie pins, which they call justification and regret. To both states of consciousness, the flesh place junkies give a lot of significance, which they call seriousness here in the world of bodies and pleasure pain. Verse 21. Sometimes, too, the flesh place fear junkies get tired of seriousness and then become hilarious. Most of those playing at being caught in the flesh place can be divided into 3 groups of stuckness. Those stuck in what they presume to be higher purpose, those stuck in what they presume to be their minds, and those stuck in what they feel are their body drives. Verse 22. You and I know that they already know something. The being parts playing within ego masks, carrying passionate bodies of past games within ego masks, within whatever their environment husks may be, exist on all 3 levels in the flesh place. The way out is always there, and so obvious that it is overlooked or mistaken for self-sacrifice on one extreme, or body lock resulting in suicide on the other. Balancing them. First, in order to balance them, it is necessary to get in touch with them. Chapter 2, verse 1. The desert night glows clear in the flesh place, and the air is clean in a sacred place you and I know. The stars glow, and you and I can hear our nerves sing and our blood roar. Even the night creatures, singing with the wind, do not interrupt the music of blood and nerves conversing with earth in universe. The afternoon in the same sacred place is another life glow of the same kind. We climb high in the pyramid rocks, just above the magnetic quartz hill where the world jams into geomantic harmony. The higher we climb, the more quickly we forget our names and the way out of this place. The fiery ones remember, and the sky turns yellow. You and I can tell that the gate is open. The red hawk soars lonely above in figure 8. The underground rivers merge with the blood roar, and our nerve song cries in the hawk's throat. The sky opens. Verse 2. Balancing the 3 selves is possible in the flesh place. The being fire burns in the crown, permeating all the rest. In these are 7 life centers. Should we tell the others what they already know, or let them find out? Verse 3. Possibly, you and I have created an alternative to the 2 possibilities just suggested. We can speak to them in whispers that they will know are familiar. That is the thing that the stuck ones will find entertaining. Whispers that they will know are familiar. Verse 4. We have been here a long time, you and I. We have been back many times, and remembered and forgotten, and hidden temples, and spoken forth, still hiding, before great numbers, while leading them into or out of wildernesses of different kinds. We have done battle and resisted doing battle. We have locked horns and run away from locking horns. We have dried our eyes of tears and learned other ways of crying. We have found our tears again, and found the many things tears can mean, in addition to grief. Verse 5. You and I, we have seen the lion-bodied giant man walking through the desert dust, confusing the pterodactyls, making them jealous of dinosaur carrion. The desert heat waves have not changed in all these sky turnings. The terrible laughter of the teeth birds remains on Now's edge. Verse 6. And what did we do then, in those moments when the lion-bodied giant man came our way, terrifying the forefathers of nightmares? Just what did we do? You remember and I remember. Let's see if they can remember. Verse 7. We've found out one thing about the stuck ones. We've just plain come out and told them countless times before. And they've got it, or thought they had it, or maybe even got enough of it to do things they thought miraculous against those who didn't get it, or got some aspect of it other than the one or ones got by the first group, or put significance on what they got that was really the same and called it different, and convinced themselves of the difference. So it just doesn't work very well to come out and tell them. It really works better to let them remember. Verse 8. Letting them remember does three things you and I would appreciate were we in their shoes. First, they get to create their experience of remembering and feel no need to kowtow to us and or burn us at some stake, or take sides about it and do both. Let's face it, we've done that before. It's boring. Second, they get to be responsible for what they've created, instead of letting someone else take the burden on. You and I, we've had enough of both fame and burdens other than our own. Third, they get to play constructive flesh place games and message on their own, instead of droving in stadiums expecting us to do it all for them. Verse 9. Let's face it, you and I. The Piscean age is over and done with. If we are to mass together in crowds, let's do it to celebrate each other. Jesus already did his trip. Let's create space for flesh place fear junkies to get what it really is.
Verse 10. Also, when they remember for themselves, they get to find their balance. In other words, they get to get that they are already balanced. That's nice. Verse 11. What are the flesh place fear junkies thinking as they read this right now? You and I, we know. Verse 12. First, they are thinking, what the hell is this? Some kind of psychosis? Is it a communist plot? Is it a capitalist plot? For sure they find it fascinating, even though a bit boring. They put all of their considerations out where they can experience them as they read this. Verse 13. Many of the stuck ones are probably sure this is a conspiracy of some sort, if not some kind of new religious cult, or both. Alas, the shackles of the Piscean age remain familiar and unidentified to those who walk forward in life, looking at a mirror at what they've passed by, and, seeing it backwards, think that's what's ahead. Verse 14. Now, they have an option about being stuck. Still, those stuck in their heads are going to want footnotes, or read them into the text, and try to understand. Some of them will even think and convince others that they understand. Some will take this personally and feel as if they're being jeered at. Those who stay stuck may never ever find out who I am. They may never ever guess who you are. Still, now they have an option about never ever. Verse 15. If we say more at this point, we will violate our agreement to whisper about familiar things, won't we? Let's not do that. Let's play the game of the no masks and the lion dance. Let's even give the head-stuck flesh-place fear junkies opportunities to goose-chase footnotes. It's fun till it gets boring. Boredom is almost there.
Verse 16. Good heavens, you and I, we could mislead the stuck ones at this point. We could tell them that it's all in the words. We could tell them that where it is to go out in the desert to the sacred place you and I both know too well. We could tell them to isolate themselves, or merge into crowds, or both. We could tell them to effort to listen to their nerves sing and their blood roar. We could tell them that's where it is. Ha! Well, we could, after all. Any of the previous would give them space to listen to their minds chatter. Maybe that would be a start. Verse 17. And then all techniques are significant and nothing is important. They'll find out, won't they, that they already have found out. Verse 18. They'll even come back once they've got it and say, "Oh my God," several times in several places. It's silly to predict where. It could be anywhere within and beyond these words. The point is to give them space, before, during, and afterwards, to say, so what? Verse 19. Some more stuck ones came by this night. You and I both know them. They asked questions of others here, and chatted and played Ain't It Awful. A couple of them, toward 11 o'clock by their time, noticed yawning and aliveness. For a moment, they even saw the night bird. I messaged with them. You've watched these things happen many times before. Messaging with them is just like messaging with the others, except that they aren't awake to it in the flesh place. Ah, skybird, nightbird, dayhawk soaring in figure eights, the game is so serious to those who won't wake up. Sometimes also those who won't wake up become frivolous and supercilious, resisting their serious positions. You and I know that this amounts to the same thing as being serious, don't we? Verse 20. The body-stuck ones, the ape-necks and neckers, they are amusing. Should we tell them that it is found in nudism, keeping it in their pants, or both? Maybe they still think it's in drugs. Drugs alter brainwaves, that's true. The problem is, when the body-stuck ones think they're getting spiritual, just how are we going to tell them what it's like to watch flat agreement consciousness in group minds transform? They'll find out that they've already found out, one way or the other. There are ghosts in the pyramid rocks, and there's magic in these words. Verse 21. The thing is, though, that getting goosed on acid and walking into buses either hurts or instantaneously puts the stuck ones someplace else where they are surrounded by their memories, or both. Dope gets them into glimpses. You and I found out that it's like the parable of the blind man and the elephant. The added twist is that the doper among them grabbed the elephant by the nuts. He was a male elephant anyway, and the elephant, forthwith and appropriately in that he was thick into his must, yelled a great yell and stomped the doper. You and I have seen that blind one still stuck out there on the astral. He's running around,
now sort of getting that he can kind of see, trying to tell the others that he is okay. Well, sort of. When you don't wake up either here or there, till you do. You and I, we know that, don't we? Verse 22. Those who are committed to higher purpose, what shall we whisper to them? Perhaps the question is, what shall we not whisper to them? They may already know of the crimson sick rose. Shall we tell them who is the rose? Shall we tell them who is the worm eating it away? No. Why should we bother? They already know. And they will find out no sooner or later than now, when they learn how to stop casting aspersions upon others not in their pet movement, or not living up to their precious expectations within that movement, and when they get that, they get how to uncreate the aspersions instead. What do we say to those who gloat in expectation of Armageddon? What do we say to tunafish who want to be canned? Blessed is the tunafish whom the stuck human eats, for the tunafish will then become stuck and human and consider it an only? They'll play around for a while, till the realization that the transformation is complete pounces upon them, or yells and stomps them, or whispers at them, and they're still wherever they are, wherever else the other stuck ones believe that is. Now they'll know that they know and knew all along. They have an option. The option will haunt them and taunt them. They cannot help but listen to themselves. Aye, there's the rub. Chapter 3, verse 1. Dark November. Wind whistling through the bean trees. Night hawk dark. Moon down. Dancing through graveyards, I cloud drift past this flesh place. Going to meet them is like walking into a party full of smoke. They drift up to me, intensely remember my name. Shadows spread with confetti light and blurred music from the others in the background. I intensely remember their names. We intensely talk, for these ones don't message except through talking, though their talking drifts in and out of thought streams and images conveyed almost like messaging. The intensity is joyous or sad or both, or something very much else which gets stuck somewhere out there beyond words that make any sense in the flesh place. It's all terribly logical and significant where they are, though. Verse 2. Some of them want me to bring messages back to the flesh place. I tell them that I cannot do more than they do by intending the messages. They do something like laugh, remembering that they are here, not there, wherever here and there are. They don't exactly forget. They just reside within undifferentiated memory, except when I think it's going to stay that way. Then, very often, it becomes like crystalline steel and electronics and super systems of cybernated technology and spaceships. Verse 3. Being there is a lot like being here, in that there are things you and I take for granted here, called agreements, and things you and I take for granted there, called other agreements. The experience of the agreements becomes more than a taking for grantedness when you and I remember that we've been waiting over there before for opportunities to find various colors of landing lights and fly back in to flesh place birth here. Verse 4. You and I have been here before. The stuck ones exude curiosity. They want proofs, a Baedeker. They want to measure it, observe it,
and repeat the measurements of observations. They strain for doctoral dissertations and play heavier than thou games, forgetting all the while to lighten up. Verse 5. Maybe what it is that proofs and Baedekers, there and or here, are so pointless when you and I know how to get around. Anyhow, the stuck ones can take our word for it. Baedekers already exist. Proofs already exist and will unfold. Those who come from belief will either believe them or disbelieve them. Those who experience them will find out that they already have found out. Verse 6. Listening is one part of it, and observing is another. Even listening to deafness, and observing unconsciousness and blindness. Take what you get. Verse 7. Part of the kinkiness of being here is forgetting that we have been there. What really makes it wild is sometimes, somehow, remembering the rainbows, and getting light on our feet, and flying places in our dreams, and making terrible sense of it, and getting the agreements for here confused with the agreements for there. You and I both know that so well, that we just can't figure out how to say it all in flush place terms.
Verse 8. Maybe this time we'll play objective correlative. Say part of it, and let them fill in the rest while we do ourselves. That way, they'll for once make it their own. That's what it is. You and I both know that. Verse 9. When we've been out there long enough, being back here sort of feels like it does out there. Walking down a hot springtime Illinois street, or a monsoon avenue in Manila or Saigon with jeepneys cruising tattersallied by, or pedicabs motorized to ease the working class and appease the leisurely, is very much a ghost land. Verse 10. To not know a language is pretty much the same thing as getting the agreements confused. Not remembering the agreements is pretty much the same thing as forgetting how to read a map. Remembering is easy when we give up making it difficult. Verse 11. Flowing through it all works. Getting stuck on ahas or uh-ohs doesn't work. It's really that simple. Do you remember how to flow through getting stuck? Of course you do. Hang out with it. Verse 12. Pride is another one. In the flesh places, the pinwheel-eyed stuckness junkies, be they Puritans, lechers, dopers, or all three in any concurrent or consecutive order. You and I have seen them, and been there ourselves at one time or another, haven't we? Get pouty and exclusive about coming from needing agreement from others. So they exclusivize their agreement to those special in ones who give it, or failing that, exhibit their ego differentiation as a weirdness. This gets them fame or incarceration, or both in simultaneous or sequential order. Some people even martyr them. That's a rich one, if gold is the same as hot air. Verse 13. Now there are many tribes wandering around in the flesh place. Some walk stridently forward into self-constructed mirror images of where they've been, and howl, "Ain't it awful?" while reconstructing their mirrors to proceed with greater dudgeon to the next bang-up. The joy is that there are many tribes, and tribes within tribes. The mirrors will reflect new lies, along with the old ones. Verse 14. The lies reflected by mirrors are often enough like what's ahead to be accurately confused with what's ahead, and thus contribute to the survival of the flesh-placed junkie's stuckness. That's what makes them continue. When it gets shaky out there, someone offers them another mirror. Just occasionally, someone takes their mirrors away. Verse 15. Creating someone to take the mirrors away lets things flow and happen. Mirrors are always an option, even when taken away. Who ultimately puts them there or takes them away? Verse 16. The dust of graveyards marches by the ruined parade stadiums near conquered empires' capital villages. Mirrors exist over there, too. So many come back in here on landing lights they see in mirrors, and are born again to make war. Verse 17. It does little to ask why this is. It does the same to ask why not. What works is to remember who created it in the first place. Verse 18. Listening with the eyes and seeing with the ears, tasting with the touch and feeling with the sense of smell, lead us to the observation of life chatter. Can you put your hands up in front of you and keep them there? Don Juan told you. Verse 19. You and I, we've been on a long journey, and every step of it is contained in the right now. Or is it rather that we've stayed in the right now and run through a holographic projection tape of a long journey? Does it make that much of a difference one way or the other? Verse 20. Well, what's so for you anyway? Can you run the tape forwards and back again as I can? Or can't you? It doesn't matter whether you can or can't. Flesh-place fear junkies get stuck on hope, despair, fear, courage, aha, and huh when they run their tapes. This makes them act their tapes out again and again. Verse 21. As for you and me, what are we bragging about? This also makes us act our tapes out again and again. Verse 22. By the way, we better tell them we're not making it wrong to be a flesh-place fear junkie, nor right to be a journeyer. Nor wrong to be a journeyer, nor right to be a flesh-place fear junkie. You paid your way here through the landing light you found. Take your choice, now that you know you've got one. If you feel like you're lost, just stand or sit there and hang out with whatever is there. You already know. Chapter 4, verse 1. I wake in the dawn and go walking. The night journeys are still very much with me, and I hold them without resisting them. The green of new grass after rain in the desert, the wildflowers shouting springtime, intensify morning before it gets warm. I have been here many times before, and will be again. Verse 2. It's all been done before, acted out before, laughed at before, taken seriously before, made war over before, made peace over before, institutionalized before, understood before, misunderstood before, rebelled against by oncoming generations before, and then done again in exactly the same way, but somehow differently enough to start the whole cycle rolling again, before. Verse 3.
I've even told you what I'm about to tell you before. The eggheads and theologians will have fun putting significance upon this as they have before, won't they? Verse 4. Once before I achieved certainty about journeying, I had a dream. I don't know what it was, except that I remember it was very, very boring. Something turgid and undigested properly. The body stuck whatever, and they would probably be right as far as they go with it. Verse 5. Anyhow, I announced in the sleep world to whomever was there that I was bored and wished that they would change the tape. I received an answer in a sort of stewardess voice, only this one needed more PR training because she whined a bit. We're only trying to entertain you. They changed the tape. It was much better. Verse 6. You and I, why don't we change the tapes to something much better? I mean, the tapes are already there, right? The tapes are already complete, right? Why do we need to keep running them over and over? I mean the ones we've been doing for what they call in the flesh place the last few millennia or so. Let's put one on we haven't heard for a long, long time. Maybe it's even really a new one, though you and I are pretty well certain that's impossible. The one I'm vaguely remembering will be as good as brand new, at least to those who insist upon not remembering it, even vaguely. The Flesh Place Fear Junkies will be convinced that it is brand new, and I think that it could run on the millennia hit parades a long time. Verse 7. No, no, no. Absolutely no violence. That won't be necessary. They already have that. Look deeper into the stack. Verse 8. That's better. You're getting the same one I'm getting. Actually, it's already started playing. It's called by many names. I call it getting off of belief-disbelief and not needing agreement or disagreement. The caption to the longer title is Experience. What you've got is what you've got. Ah, yes. I see that whether you've created it or found it, you've really got it. Verse 9. With so many of us here who journey, and with more of us popping through to now awareness every parsec, it's better to listen to and experience the tape that's playing now. Verse 10. Oh sure, Flesh Place Fear Junkies have mirrors on their ears and they don't even know it. They live their lives by mirrors. Verse 11. Once I had a crazy uncle who owned a pool hall. It was one of the old kind with an open front. Flies would come in and he would hang fly paper. He'd run out of fly paper, so many flies got stuck. Verse 12. Anyhow, he'd get furious and run outside swatting flies. Apparently, the flies, much like Flesh Place Fear Junkies, like to watch their kind being slaughtered. The more that came, the more he swatted. That's the way the new tape is playing, just like the old ones. Verse 13. So it is that the Flesh Place Fear Junkies will make right and make wrong, finding conspiracies stuck to the flypaper of their intellect. Verse 14. They will first blame this group, and then that group, and then this religion, and then that religion. Then they will blame drugs, then pollution, then youth, then sex, then Puritanism, then the bomb, then the peace creeps, then themselves. It gets boring, doesn't it? Verse 15. Then a few of them will do their Santa Claus takeaway and maybe even create living happily ever after. They will, only if they get something about the Flesh Place and a lot of other places.
living happily or unhappily or mediocrely or extraordinarily ever after, and ever after all by itself, all have one thing in common: their problems. Verse 16. Really, it's not fair, except when it is. That makes it even more unfair when it's unfair, also more fair when it's fair than if it were just undifferentiated fairness or unfairness. That's what it's like in the flesh place, and many other levels and places. What it's like in the white light is something else again, except that it includes what it's like here too, as entertainment. Verse 17. Anyhow, for those running around mad with reasoning, listening to, thinking in, looking at, and wishing for all in their mirrors, they will keep on a while. Only something you and I know is inevitable. It's Kali Yuga o'clock. It's really unreasonable. You and I, we know that. Verse 18. You and I watched a hamster in an exercise wheel once, running himself into an ecstasy. He ran really fast, and then hung on, and the wheel took him around, bounced up as if to start for another turn, and seesawed back and forth to a stop. Verse 19. We watched that hamster give it another go. This time he ran and ran and ran and ran and ran. Then he hung on, and the wheel gave him a ride twice. Then again it stopped. He kept hanging on, dizzy-eyed. Is that getting stuck on happily ever after? Verse 20. Anyhow, the hamster went over into the corner of the cage, burrowed into the sawdust, and hid. Verse 21. The new tape that's on is set to the time of Kali Yuga o'clock, isn't it? Yes, you and I, we've seen it and listened to it and lived it before. Some of them didn't want to. Maybe now some of them are ready for remembering it. Verse 22. That's the thing with this old new tape. The thing that makes it seem crazy to the ones stuck in the Hall of Mirrors. Significance is optional. Chapter 5, verse 1. Up in the same water system as Sespe Hot Springs, up in Ventura County, there is this place where a creek gets deep, flowing over and by a big rock that you and I both know. Verse 2. You and I remember a time when we watched a bunch of journeyers and flesh place fear junkies skinny dipping there. We were too. Verse 3. Anyhow, one of the flesh place fear junkies, a guy who was all pinwheel-eyed and belief-stuck about being flaked on acid and making those who weren't wrong, swam and dove and swam and slammed right into the rock. He got a 5-point concussion. That's what we call slamming into an agreement. Verse 4. The thing is, we all agreed that the rock was and is there. We all put it there as part of the game board. We even all agreed, including him, that he would have and exercise the option to swim and dive and swim and slam into it. Verse 5. That's the thing about the flesh place and several other levels and places, in slightly different ways, usually, though not always exactly. Significance is now optional, and agreements, at least the solid ones we agreed to call permanent, relatively so still, are not always optional. Verse 6. Drugs get flesh place fear junkies and journeyers confused about agreements, like gravity, and what happens on this level when you jump unaugmented by parachutes or something, off tall buildings and buses hurting when they hit you and stuff like that. Verse 7. That's on this level. What's so on other levels is terribly so there as well. It works to keep the agreements straight. It does not work to get them confused. It works to remember which level or levels you're operating on. It does not work to forget. Yes, of course, you and I both know that it is possible to operate on more than one level at once. Possible, hell, we do it all the time. It's just that we're focused on one or the other specifically, more than the others we're on at any given point. Verse 8. The theoretical physicists are just finding out, or so they think. Some of them may even be realizing that they are remembering. That's when it really gets to be fun, unless they think it's a soap opera. In the flesh place, even boo-hoos way underneath are fun. Verse 9. Now some literal-minded flesh place fear junkies are going to think that you and I condone doing negative things because way underneath it's all fun. Not so. First, what goes around comes around. Second, it's Kali Yuga o'clock.
Verse 10. It works to go with the flow in the flesh place, or any other place. You and I both know that we are going with the flow anyway, and that if we resist the flow, we get pulled along and maybe dashed against one of the agreements. Verse 11. The thing is, you and I, we're here, right? What works then? Verse 12. Failing to find what works, we find what doesn't work. In each case, we have what? Works. Verse 13. Get it? Works include what works and what doesn't work. Jesus said, "By their works shall ye know them." He was doing nothing more or less than directing traffic in the direction in which it was already going. Verse 14. So then, it works to do what works. The thing is that journeyers know that whatever happens, we remain alive. Flesh place fear junkies think that they have to do something about it to survive. That's the problem. Verse 15. Flesh place fear junkies, with all the best expectations, or even some nasty expectations, do negative things that work in programming negative results. Flesh place fear junkies come from needing to survive, so they opt for survival rather than getting that they are alive. Thus, they operate from the need to become better and fear of getting worse. They get stuck in getting worse a lot, even when they have agreement that whatever they've got is better. It's what it tastes like and feels like and is like that it's worthwhile to tell the truth about. Verse 16. When it's supposed to be sweet and isn't, that's when many flesh place fear junkies get curious and or nasty. Sometimes they pop out of their flesh tubes permanently for this time around, trying to prove that they are right and that it does taste sweet like the ads and everybody else they listen to and imitate says it should, when it really doesn't for them personally. Verse 17. Or, flesh place fear junkies may be running a revolving life tape around something that feels sweet and doesn't produce sweetness for others. Then they boo-hoo about it and make it right and others who don't do it wrong, or make it wrong and justify it by making themselves right and getting agreement that they're right for other things they do, and by voting when they've already voted. You and I know this. We also know something else. It is important to warn the violence fetishists among the flesh place fear junkies to watch out for stereotypes. Graven images, they are sometimes called.
Verse 18. Both journeyers and flesh place fear junkies abound in all lifestyles, races, cultures, creeds, neighborhoods, countries. And people are popping through all the time. It works to give them space. It does not work to make right and make wrong. Verse 19. While we're whispering, we better whisper something else. There's no such thing as trying on this or any other millennia tape. There's only doing or not doing, being or not being, having or not having. Verse 20. Thus, it does not work to lie about whatever is coming up for you, if you're a journeyer, or about whatever you are, if you're still insisting on being a flesh place fear junkie. You and I know that all of you remember. Verse 21. Going back to the 3 tie pins, ironically, confusingly, and paradoxically, trying does exist as experimenting, which means, guess what? Doing or not doing, being or not being, having or not having. It's just that flesh place fear junkies miss it by giving themselves stroke points for trying and efforting and beating themselves up and others, and blaming and shaming and feeling innocent or guilty or both. And they think those are the agreements. Verse 22. So what are the agreements? Aha, you tell me. First, if you've got mirrors there, remember that they give them backwards. You might put them down and see what works and what doesn't work. You might also see what brings survival and what brings aliveness. Take a look at your agreements. It works to keep them. For those that can be dissolved, it works to dissolve them if you're not going to keep them. It does not work to lie about them, to forget them, or to hide from them, which amounts to the same thing as hiding your head under a chair with your hind end sticking in the wind, thinking nobody can see your hind end because you can't. To keep the agreements, it works to tell the truth about them and where you are with them. To do this, you get to remember them. They are there. You can remember. Hang out with it. Chapter 6, verse 1. Among flowers, among trees, among coral, among animated creatures of other sorts, there are many different kinds. Among stars, among planets, among galaxies, among microbes, there are many different kinds. That's the way it is in universe, between sunlight and sun clips, and beyond sunlight and sun clips. There are many different kinds. Verse 2. You and I know that. It's obvious. Imagine, though, if you will, a person who despises all flowers but one color of one kind. Maybe it is because he or she has
a great experience of the oneness with, around, or because of the one kind, and thereupon forsakes all others, and thereupon sets out to destroy all others. Is this really useful? Verse 3. Surely people have their favorite kinds, and favorite ones of favorite kinds. That's the way many journeyers are, and the way many flesh-place fear junkies are. Verse 4. Yet there are those who would take away life from every kind of something but one or a few, because of their creation of preferences. These ones are stuck on make rights and make wrongs. They have a game, taking away aliveness in the interest of survival. Verse 5. It is as if they are like a hermit stuck in a dungeon with plenty of food and water for many years, till he forgot what light was like. Somebody threw him a match. He lit it, said, "Aha!" He lit some straw afire and beheld the light, and thought that he had found it. Soon the light went out, and he was in darkness and disappointment again, having burned himself with flaming straw. Verse 6. Then, a bit later, just after he had lost all hope, someone threw him a long life cell flashlight. He'd committed himself for a long time and had never seen one of these before. He turned it on, and it glowed for a long time, though he had long ago lost sense of clock time. He hyped himself into believing that it was the light of the universe. Then one day, Coyote took over the dungeon. There were many hermits in the cells of this dungeon, each not knowing or having forgotten about the others, burning themselves with matches and straw, and getting high long afterward on flashlights. Coyote played a trick. It so happened that the cells were all thick-walled and situated around a great circle. Coyote took a set of sideshow mirrors and put them at strategic places in the central hall, into which all the hermit cells had doors. He turned out the lights in the central hall, which were dim at best anyway. Then he pushed the button that opened all the hermits' doors, letting them all out at once. Guess what happened? Verse 8. You and I both know. We've been there a few times before, haven't we? Verse 9. When peacocks fight for hens, it's simple. They strut feathers before hens and do their damnedest to stamp the feathers of any other male in the hen yard. It's a simple parlay for the gene pool jacuzzi, a fight for good vibrations, constructive friction. Verse 10. What about when flesh-place fear junkies strut their zeal feathers? That doesn't look so simple, does it? Verse 11. They really do a fan dance behind humility and arrogance. What makes it interesting is that the humility of flesh-place fear junkies is usually arrogance in drag. Verse 12. It's a game called Make Us Right and Make Them Wrong. And in order to make them wrong, we need to get underneath that they are right. and be covert about it to ourselves and resist them for survival's sake. Verse 13. And in order to make us right, we need to get underneath that we are wrong and be covert about it to ourselves and resist finding out for survival's sake. Verse 14. If we both find out that we are both right and wrong in our universes, the game is over. Some people are scared of whatever it is after the game is over. And how much fear are they willing to cause and be at the effect of because they are afraid of whatever it is after the game is over? Verse 15. Coyote will tell them, or he'll start up another game.
Verse 16. In order to play survival, it is necessary to pretend that things are incomplete and that they need to get better in order to be complete. Also, it is necessary to believe that there isn't enough to go around and get everybody playing to agree. Verse 17. Anyhow, that's what flesh play sphere junkies take for totally granted, believe in, despair of, and hope against. The survival game, which they get off on, or get off on not getting off on, or something more Baroque in terms of onion layers of getting off on whatever. Verse 18. It's what's so for them, in other words. Not so obviously, something else is really so. Not to be believed in, not to be hoped for, just so. Aliveness games. Verse 19. Aliveness games start when one comes from the position of taking total responsibility for creating everything complete and forgetting that the whole thing is a process of unfolding, not understanding it, getting it. Understanding is a flesh play sphere junkie mind game, equivalent to verbal stereotyping with a hope attached to it that somehow some comfort release will come from a given verbal or mathematical formula, and that it will end happily ever after right there. Verse 20. Truly, you and I know that sometimes some understandings work, some for a longer time than others. These give flesh play sphere junkies ample opportunities to polish their mirrors and be right about them. Then understandings stop working, and flesh play sphere junkies get mean and play survival and make wrong on people who point out that their pet understandings do not work, or at least do not work for them personally. Verse 21. Understandings create space for understanding one thing at a time. Getting things creates space for many understandings and for moving off of positions. Verse 22. The first step in getting things is to get where you are with them, which means being able to get off of stereotypes about what is hip and or unhip, should-oughts, and being willing to admit that you don't get it if that's what's so for you, and being able to put that there by hanging out with it. You may even get nothing. Rejoice. Chapter 7, verse 1. Quietly, the roar builds up.
bouncing up and out of the flesh place, as if up from a trampoline. I almost forget the other agreements. For one thing, I almost forget that I can fly. The roar has faded. I climb through images I put there. The bedroom is different. It's easy to get stuck on that. Verse 2. Up and through the dark tunnel, I intend going to the white light this time. The others are there. From here on, I just cannot say it in flesh place terms.
Verse 3. You and I have been there. The flesh place fear junkies have been there. Some go there a whole lot. I talk to them on other levels. They message on levels of messaging. I know them. They know me. Verse 4. Back here in the flesh place, I meet them, sometimes for the first time in this life. They often say, I feel as if I already know you. Sometimes they act shaken up and they draw away. They do know me. I know them. You and I both know them. They know the games and we know the games. They sometimes don't want to look at the game. Verse 5. I'll admit it. It used to be very frustrating, and I'd act out the frustration. I'd come on and scare them. I'd wag at them. I'd shoot wake-up colors at their eggs. Occasionally it worked, not very often. Too often, they'd go counterphobic and call me crazy. I was smart enough to stay on this side of the line which borders impolitic behavior from the politic, so they just found reasons to leave me alone and cancel my minor votes, not my major votes. Verse 6. I do it differently now. I used to make wrong on them for being unconscious. That is, their unconsciousness of what I thought they should be aware was very much not okay with me. That made things worse. Verse 7. I got to look at my own unconsciousness of the ramifications around being on a make right on myself and a make wrong on them. I was resisting them being where they were, and they stayed there. It was, and is, if you're there, sort of like being stuck in one of those little finger puzzles you used to be able to get in border town shops or in Chinatown curio shops, wherever. The harder you pull, trying to get out, the more stuck you get. Lighten up and it flows. You can get unstuck. Verse 8. Anyhow, that's what I found out about the old new tape, and it was true of the Piscean tape, and it is true of those in Mirrorland. It is also true that if I watch the clock on the flesh place level, the pot will never boil. That is, when I wait for them to get off it, it seems they never do. I'm resisting them being there, actually. I'm not letting go of my intention, not letting go, not getting that it's complete and perfect as such, and therefore intending for something other than what I think I'm intending to manifest. Verse 9. What's true about journeying is true about the flesh place. Intentions are evidenced only in results. Verse 10. You and I have found out about that the hard way. You and I both know that here is a place, and the other places are places. Agreements are agreements, and we have experienced loss from not keeping them, and great gain from keeping them, wherever and whatever they are. Verse 11. Some gee-whizzers who journey or stay stuck think that the cheese is in journeying. You and I know that journeying can be a stuckness. It's too easy for some people to journey. They don't keep their agreements properly here, and they end up in the madhouse, or bankrupt, or popped out of their flesh tubes permanently. Popped out of their flesh tubes. They may not keep their agreements there either, thereby give themselves a reason to lose their voices, to lose their votes here. Verse 12. You and I know that perfection is cheese, and that it's in keeping the agreements. Verse 13. Actually, it is of assistance to appreciate things. There are many stuck in other places who come from need to be here. Verse 14. Being here and coming from need to be there, or being there and coming from need to be here, or being stuck and coming from need to journey, or being a journeyer and coming from need to be stuck are all soap operas. The center of a soap opera, its seed, actually, is coming from need. Verse 15. There are many ways to journey, even when one is stuck. It starts by coming from the position of having created the whole thing. The ego often reasons and or riots that this is not possible. You and I, we call ego's reasoning and rioting a bullshit. Verse 16. Our being, long ago, divided up into many and put on ego costumes in layers and layers. So that we could play soap opera for a while, differentiate the abundance, and come from need to see what that feels like. 17. It became boring to be at option about coming from need, at least for those of us who've ever been or are stuck. So we played it harder. We created forgetting that there was anything else other than coming from need. That makes the game really kinky. Now we get to effort to remember and forget and remember and forget and remember. Verse 18. Well, look at it. Starvation next to incredible abundance in India and many other places. War, pollution, the bomb, tears, joy, having, not having, revenge, forgiveness, validation, invalidation, rebellion, conformity, falling away, repenting of falling away, boredom, amusement, the brand new radical gee whiz and or so what, the old worn out conventional gee whiz and or so what, pain and pleasure, pleasure pain and pain pleasure, sinning and being saved, saving by sinning and sinning to be saved, making rules, pretending they are laws, breaking and or keeping them, being overt, being covert, mixing these two up incredibly, getting and forgetting whatever kind of agreements, confusion and clarity, Being clear about being confused, confused about being clear, hamsters on wheels, who or what else on wheels? Oh, you and I, we're hanging out with it, aren't we? Verse 19. Stuckness is basically ego layers acting as mind, creating ego in present tense with all tenses cooperating, some overt, some hidden, masquerading as being, and the being, to all appearances, choosing, and to all appearances, seeming to forget that it has chosen, to forget that it has created and put on the ego layers so that ego becomes confused with being. Being still experiences, and ego tells stories. Verse 20. You and I remember that being journeys, and ego goes along. Sometimes ego nags being, and being lets it drive. Eventually, this means getting stuck wherever, however, on whatever. Ego, wrapped in its layers, acts like a nagging spouse. Ego insists that a journey was just so, not the way being experienced it. Sometimes ego insists that there is no journeying at all, that it does not believe in journeying, in other words. In Flesh Place Fear Junkies, it is so. Ego is like the nagging, dominating spouse, and being appears as if it is the pecked, put upon, dominated spouse. In Stuck Journeyers, it is the same. Verse 21. When being remembers who is the powerful one experiencing and who rides along, the ego becomes completely cooperative, and it is possible to experience things in perfection, just as they are, and not as they're not. You and I have experienced something else about this. When we brag about it and try to cherish it by hanging on to it and putting it in a silver box, saying, "This is it," we get to uncreate it and play the way we were, and or that was it and nothing else can ever match up. When we are willing to throw away the silver box and share, we realize how real it is and let it change. When we share without the silver box, we can create and uncreate whatever we had once placed or would have otherwise put in the silver box. We can create and uncreate what we're sharing. This way, even perfection does not run us. Another name for the silver box is the casket. You and I remember this well, don't we? Chapter 8, verse 1. The blue place before the white light is filled with stars, not as they're seen with flesh place eyes. Journeying there is spherical, and there is a focus toward one thing which can come back in and be one focus upon all things. Time, as we know it, does not exist. Verse 2. Some there are who will tell you that you need a life cord to travel. You and I have found out that the trouble with making a life cord is that it can get cut. Knowing oneself there and intending it works better in our experience. Verse 3. At any rate, it is the cords and the hangings-on that make order appear as chaos, as does trying to judge the totality of the behavior by one of its parts. In different contexts, Bucky has pointed this out time and time again, it's what's so. Verse 4. The transformation is here and has already taken place. You and I and the rest, we all get to play out its unfolding in many transformation flowers. The transformation is something that changes the significance and essence of three things in ongoing now. The significance and essence of that labeled as past. The significance and essence of that labeled as present. The significance and essence of that labeled as future. Verse 5. The transformation does not need anyone's belief or agreement to make it work. It is the essence of what some conceptually call deep space. It is like a chunk of collapsed star, which is so dense we do not notice it falling through the universe. It has passed, and by mirrored eyes and hearts keeping beat to mirrored emotions, it was not noticed for what it was. Verse 6. The transformation is the essence of the agreements. For one thing, it's Kali Yuga o'clock. As has been mentioned before, things race. Even the nature of time passing is warped speed. Reflective surfaces abound. Dancing mind and auric energy abound. Ego games which are fixed are devoured not just in Ophiuchus. They are devoured by the speeding up of life tapes. Verse 7. Closed systems open as petals to the sun. In the time of the compassionate one, they say resides in the dark star in Ophiuchus below Scorpio. Verse 8. Those who remain attached to fixed egos, all of which are closed systems, may feel the transformation as burning fire. Those who come into being contact and get that they can only remain there may experience the transformation by dancing through the fiery furnace. How does one take this? Get what you get. Hang out with it. Be willing to move on. Verse 9. Survival is the yoke of ego, which is burned off. Aliveness is the delight of being, which breathes in its own element. Verse 10. Once again, mirror freaks may get agreements confused. In this situation, the best they can do is experience transformation strained through outworn metaphors, and yield themselves to it only through resignation. They miss the party which is going on within and around them while they do this. Verse 11. Then, too, missing it for a while is one way of celebrating it. Those who opt and forget that they're opting for not getting it will merely get it later on in the tape right now. Getting it is getting it, one way or another. Verse 12. There are a lot of people who are curious about what form the transformation may take. Get that the question should be, what forms is the transformation taking? Take your pick. Verse 13. You and I have seen Atlantis and Lemuria go down. It's really kind of trite to do that again. And we may get to be trite again. That's boring, though, and we can get beyond boredom, which is high space, and we can get higher, can't we? Verse 14. What we get to do is clean up the game board. Uh-oh, some of the mirror freaks think that means getting violent. Can't you hear them? Verse 15. Actually, violence, Mansonite, Symbionese, Marxist, Maoist, imperialist, expansionist, contractionist, nationalist, internationalist, so-called peace-fighting, overt adversarial, the American apple pie version, and any other kind, are overt manifestations, when they occur, of the multi-headed, Procrusteanly faceted survival game that is dirtying up the game board. Yet still, it takes two parties to play kick-me, the kicker and the kickee. In the flesh place and on so many other levels, being a master is simply being a slave in drag, and vice versa. Winning is losing in drag, and the other way around. You and I have found out often enough, haven't we? Verse 16. Evil has been defined by Werner as opting for survival rather than aliveness. Any way we slice it, playing below the line in flesh place junkie stuckness is playing well clamped by the three tie pins. Verse 17. The way it hasn't worked for a long time can be abstracted as follows. Somebody gets an idea and makes it workable. Maybe some more people experience it working. Then others come along and start to believe in it and hang on to it, thereby making it go away sooner or later. Anyhow, in the process of believing in it, which means individually and or collectively resisting doubts about the idea by making them wrong and withholding them within and from oneself and or within and from the group, while invalidating them in others and violently preaching the doctrine of the believed in idea, so that the doubts become more or less unconscious and definitely taboo within the individual and or group ego stack, and are acted out and realized consciously by the believers only as overt make-wrongs targeted with concurrent, confluent, and unconscious counterphobia at others not aligned with the believed-in idea. The group of believers gather agreement through propaganda and whatever working demonstrations they can muster for the idea they are preciously hanging on to, and resultantly, more believers, who are often attracted by reacting against disbelief in the generating idea from those accurately categorizable as actively and passively resisting and thereby giving power to the idea, the believing group identify the way man is as being incomplete and imperfect, and in need of more or less radical completing and perfectionizing. Consequently, they create reasons to set up standards, platforms, manifestos, dogmas, creeds, ideologies as to how man should be remade in order to become complete and perfect. To this end, the believers play win and lose power games. If they win, they assume power. To the degree that they believe man has to be remade in an ideal image set in their mirrors, they impose a tyranny, with whatever violence and abrogation of freedom they deem necessary, often enough contrary to what they preach, to implement their remaking. Aha! This is where everything they resist reasserts itself. The reality of their resistance gooses them. Verse 18. You and I could add details to the previous abstraction ad nauseum. One detail that we might whisper about is making martyrs. Martyrs are energizers of causes which kill aliveness. This is not to say that martyrdom has not brought some useful changes. Rather, it is to say that martyrdom becomes inefficient at Kali Yuga o'clock. We have more useful abstractions with which to pull down power. That's one of the beauties of the transformation. Verse 19. At this point, let's whisper a bit more about how it hasn't worked. Evil, opting for survival rather than aliveness, in other words, procreates its nullification by mirror offset. The most simple form is A hits B, B hits A back. You and I know that it gets more Baroque than that, though it remains that at its center. A gets not okay with B and hits him. B then becomes at effect and not okay with A, or was in the first place, and hits back. Time can have interesting effects on group minds who play this way. Group A gets mad at B, maybe making it class war or genocide or religious war as a way of getting back at B. Maybe then A wins and sets up something very close to a duplicate system of the one B had, or that they had conned themselves into believing B had, that they hated so much. Either that or Group A gets defeated and Group B gets to gloat and or be horrified. B throws a war crimes trial and or public self-immolations with executions for Group A prisoners. Group B gets to be right about winning, in other words. Sooner or later, people inheriting B's victory really get to hate and remember what A did, make A not okay and be horrified, to put it another way. Then, whenever anything else comes up that looks to them like what A did, the inheritors of B get their reactive buttons pushed. Then the inheritors of B get to rerun, act out something exactly or pretty much like what A did in the first place. Then, too, sometimes the ones that inherit the wealth of B's victories get to make the older generation play Ain't It Awful by rebelling against their predecessors and taking on the trappings of something that looks like more or less modified A, one way or another. Verse 20. You and I can smell these tapes rotting at Kali Yuga o'clock, can't we? It's kind of a false, stinky cheese called ersatz counterphobia reaction Limburger. Only unlike real Limburger, it keeps on rotting and rotting inside the belly and out. Verse 21. So cleaning up the game board is one beautiful way of aligning with the transformation that already is. We've whispered about how it hasn't worked before, you and I. Now maybe we'll whisper about what works, remembering to leave it objective correlative so that the others will pick up on it and get that it's their own. Verse 22. After all, the transformation is something that belongs to more than just you and me, doesn't it? Really, the transformation belongs to and has been created complete by everybody in the universe. We all get to take responsibility for it. Chapter 9. Verse 1. In the deep night of blue glowing, in the middle of the journey, amidst color spirals and galactic birds fire dancing, rainbows are born. The space wind journeys carry me to wherever I intend, and there are journeyers and stuck ones there. I glance through and peep through vortex tunnels of light and darkness glowing. Others glance back. Possibly one of the most intriguing things that happens, whether one is stuck or journeying or freed up about or stuck on either, is finding, when one peeps curiously at others in other spaces and places, all the time, not putting much significance upon what or where one is, that others, in those peeped-at spaces and places, are peeping back with curiosity equivalent to one's own. You and I, we've experienced that many times, haven't we? Verse 2. Many there are who want to gain an understanding of what one is and where one is and how it is to be that way in that place or space or in those places or spaces. Usually those who are after an understanding are after verbalizable concepts so that they can pigeonhole or gadget replicate whatever it is they're curious about. That's not to say that there is either anything terribly right or wrong about understanding whatever it is. What it is to say is that with what you and I have experienced, translating the songs of our brothers and sisters, the great and smaller whales, or the scream of the teeth birds, or the roarings of other predecessors of littler birds, the dinosaurs, is at best inefficient, at worst gainful in actual experience of nothing at all useful. You and I have discovered that some things need not be translated, haven't we? Verse 3. Some there are who are in flesh place fear junkie stuck space, and some who are in stuck space about journeying, who perceive things in terms of overmuch significance upon what they term civilization and literacy, meaning the ability to read with the flesh place optics and comprehend linear print, or for that matter, any kind of print. You and I have discovered that there is more to seeing than reading with flesh place optics, and that there is more to reading than comprehending mere print on flesh place pages, haven't we? Verse 4. More useful it would be for those described previously to expand their experience of reading, to include reading and seeing and getting far more and far less than mere print. We are not talking about vicarious experience of any kind when we speak of transformations or the transformation, are we? Except when we are. Verse 5. Intellectuals and conceptualists and others belief-stuck may find great rewards in questing for Australian Aboriginal dream time or in seeking the voyages of the Hopis. It is appropriate not to look at what they don't have. It is again appropriate to ask what the old ones have forgotten. Then again, our flesh place culture has a deplorable habit of being indifferent to senior citizens, doesn't it? A lot of the old ones have not forgotten as much as some may think, either. They are amused at us when they are not being plagued and or irritated by our shenanigans. Another thing to find out from the old ones is what they no longer need. That's how come they've forgotten and not forgotten. And who are the oldest of the old ones? Aha! You and I know them well. The great and smaller whales. The ones wise as little children in the flesh place. And what are we doing to these, the most serene of the living in the flesh place? Make no mistake, they too have a soap opera. The killer whales are their mafia, along with a few other gangsters of their own kind. Verse 6. Curiosity seekers who grumble as they experience what is here to experience may find richness in reading the seasons and leaves. Can their ones read the angelic message in a black widow's spiderweb? or perhaps the archangelic message in the webs of all arachnida? Anyway. Can the curiosity seekers read the dance of the DNA and see its shadow in the caduceus? Those who can will see what cultural adolescence now abounds in the flesh place. Verse 7. And in reading, what do curiosity seekers expect? Who are the ancestors of the great and smaller whales? Should we tell them or let them find out? If we tell them to look in the mirror, they will be as belief stuck as ever, and they won't quite get what it is and was anyway. Looking glasses are better, though they are still looking glasses. Letting them remember is better still. Verse 8. And of codes and keys. What of the red lion, the elixir? The stuck ones will melt pennies and try for gold. Even those who goose chase or even by chance find this, even they may continue to observe what comes up for them. All there are in the flesh place and on many other levels and in many other spaces and places are problems, after all. You and I, we've discovered that already. Should we tell them that the magical words are, so what? Aha, they may even get stuck here. Verse 9. Ah, you and I, we have had to remember something stated here before. Ego is the nagging spouse. Ego tells stories. Ego identifies with whatever is going on as itself, and whatever is out there or inside the flesh tube as either aiding, attacking, or of no consequence. Ego is unconscious sometimes, even then often insisting it's intensely conscious when it's not beating itself up for being unconscious. Ego is right and wrong. Ego laughs and boo-hoos. Ego insists it's the being and or that it can never get there and it's all bullshit. Ego validates and invalidates. Ego gets agreement and failing that will garner disagreement. Ego thinks it can vote when it already has way back there on the tape or when being already has. Ego, when busted for acting as the nagging spouse, will sometimes attempt to masquerade as the whining child, the good child, the parent, the nagging aunt or uncle, the doting and adoring one. Ego gets stuck in ruts, the worst one often being the insistence that it is a free spirit. Verse 10. Ego is sometimes superstitious, if not always. Just occasionally, ego aligns with what being already knows and has already known and has always known. Sometimes it even does this for what you and I know as a very long time in flesh-place terms. This is so whether the individual in question has garnered praise or a straitjacket, or both, in some sort of sequence, or even at once. Remember the 3 tie pins. Verse 11. Then ego can jump off the alignment, misleading the individual and or any others whose votes it has gained during the alignment period. Verse 12. Something else works that you and I both know. What is it? When we're doing it, ego may feel more in control than ever before, or it may, in the twinkling of an eye, change and feel that it is totally influenced by being. Verse 13. Ego chatters, screams, shuts up, has body sensations, is numb, remembers things, forgets things. Ego has standards, even if one of them is having no standards. Sometimes ego gets that it survives by becoming possessed. This means opting for maximum survival at the expense of aliveness. Verse 14. They tell many people in primary school that Columbus, presuming that the world is round, discovered some place called America. They make it sound as if he were the first one to think of the world as round, in a time when all others thought it flat. They make it sound as if he really did discover something we call the New World and label it America or the Americas. They make it sound as if the previous terms are accurate. Verse 15. Certainly many presumed the world to be flat in the time of whomever Columbus was. People may have even gotten barbecued for over asserting anything different. Certainly the terms New World and America taste like accuracy on the conscious and unconscious tongues of many right now. Verse 16. Who are they just mentioned anyway? What about the terms? Who gave them accuracy? What about accuracy anyway? Verse 17. Now take a subject like the nature of man. You and I could give the others a game to play, couldn't we? The same game we just played with Columbus and America. Whom would the scholars find to enshrine next, and for what? Verse 18. In the firestorm, in the deep electric blue, in the pedestrian places, and in the places of standing still and of infinite running, the transformation already is. It includes, permeates, transcends, is immanent, and at one with everyone and everything. That's so whether one believes in it or not. Verse 19. You and I, we have not given ourselves or the others much to believe in, haven't we? Have we? No. We've given them a great deal at which to yell bullshit. Verse 20. Hey, you others, what is it at which you believe you're yelling bullshit? Have a look at that, even while it's going on and you're yelling. Verse 21. Actually believing in the transformation is pointless. Doing so is a mirror offset experience. If it's really so, it's superfluous to believe in it. Believing in something, one can easily miss experiencing it. Verse 22. The transformation works for those who do what works. To those who are still peeping, we may whisper a suggestion. Keep watching everything. And when you're not watching, watch yourself not watch. Aha! Don't even get stuck on that one. Chapter 10, verse 1. In journeying in the great spaces, in the small spaces, in the velvet and electric blue, and the deep sea rainbows, where daylight is darkness and darkness is daylight, you and I have found something else out, both easily and the hard way. We've forgotten and remembered and forgotten and remembered and forgotten and remembered. In the journeys here in the flesh place or there in the other places and spaces, whatever we're going to do with it next is precisely that. Whatever we do with it next, that's what makes it so captivating. Verse 2. Ah, how easy it is to be familiar with the flesh place. And after a while, you and I have become familiar with the other places. Here and in the other places, being familiar, whether at ease or not, amasses a residue of tapes of undergoings we call common sense, a bundle of mirror offset, occasionally omni-embracing, yet finite sense pictures that work till they don't. That's what we found out. And that's not all. However, it is worthwhile to uncreate common sense as a barrier. Verse 3. For instance, to common sense, it looks like the world is the center of the universe, and like the sun and everything else travels around it. It really looks to common sense like Ptolemy had it all figured out. The world looks flat down close to those who've never flown in the flesh place. Now, after astronauts have gone to the moon, some of those here get that it's common sense to believe that the world is approximately round. Some still don't believe it. Verse 4. To common sense, brand new cars, or many other things made of metal, or many made of concrete, look and feel totally permanent, totally solid. Those junkied on common sense really get to believe whatever it is that common sense senses. That's about it. Common sense is stuckness based upon belief. Sometimes it's aligned with what is, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's not aligned, and the importance of it being not aligned does not emerge till an emergency. Bucky has said it. It works to be ready for emergencies. Verse 5. To those operating upon what they believe is common sense, who insist upon not remembering that they've flown to levels beyond the flesh place, the nature of man appears to be corporeal, although the life element remains a mystery, and a bit of the flesh place stuck put beliefs there. A lot of the flesh place stuck put beliefs there. Some of them even have experiences which they may get so vividly that they try to get others to believe them. If these experiences are replicable in physical results, what results is either something flesh-place types call technological advancement, or if what results garners enough belief and agreement and is replicated some other way by enough of the others, it is termed miraculous. Other than these, flesh-place stuck people have experiences, attempt to get the belief of others, and often end up with their votes canceled for their trouble. Thus, they pitfall into putting their experiences into silver boxes and get all combative and serious and heaved up about them, playing agreement-disagreement ping-pong on various levels, all of which is mirror offset. The experience comes to pass, and those who experience it attempt to hang on to it. Verse 6. The experience is and was the experience. The hangers-on end up humming or whistling the way we were a whole lot. Verse 7. You and I can hear them again. Some are clamoring, but if we don't believe in things, how do we keep them? In all the rainbows, in all the dullness, in all the commercials, in all the video expectations, they see no alternative. Clearly, there is experience. Clearly, there is memory. Verse 8. Again we hear clamoring, memorizing things is hard. We may have to take a memory course. Memory courses are fine stuff for the nagging spouse, and we're not making nagging spouses wrong for being what they are. Remembering it all, the ego mind has to do. Remembering is all the ego mind has to do. It's easy for those who intend it to be easy. The nagging spouse may enjoy a good memory course. That will be fun if the nagging spouse does it for fun. It's not really necessary for the kind of thing you and I are whispering about here, though. Verse 9. Getting that one is already in touch with experience works. Being optional about significance is of assistance. Verse 10. Being optional about significance means being able to get off of agreement-disagreement needs, which, thanks to the 3 tie pins, is possible even when one is stuck on them, simply by watching oneself be stuck on them. Verse 11. You and I notice that some are getting an aha, which they may get stuck on. Watching oneself means acknowledging responsibility, and there is no one lifestyle, mannerism complex, or outward ego behavior which can be guaranteed as a surety label that a given individual or group have got it. Playing in crowds versus out crowds is for sure stuckness space. So are compulsively being the same as or different from any given individual or group, including states and nations. We all have got it. When one gets down or up or in or out or moving or standing still to it, this is still so, even when one doesn't. Verse 12. The reverse is also true. There is no one lifestyle, mannerism complex, or outward ego behavior which can be guaranteed as a surety label that a given individual or group have not got it. For sure, there are some groups and individuals who have blown it. Take the Nazis. How do we know this? By their works. Also, all of us had a little nagging hunch, which we paid varying degrees of attention or unconsciousness to, which even they had. Look at all the secret police. That little intuition or hunch or silence that can also be a screaming loud voice, that's natural knowing. That's remembering. We get to hang out with it, don't we? Verse 13. Still, they had it. Otherwise, how could they have blown having it? Verse 14. It is appropriate to remember to watch out when one finds oneself compelled to run around swatting flies outdoors. Something is rotten. Expectation is not aligning with intention, or the other way around. Verse 15. You and I have discovered something about expectations and intentions, haven't we? Expectations, which are sometimes labeled intentions, do not always turn out to be intentions, which are what manifests in results, which always are what manifests in results. Conversely, intentions, which we sometimes label expectations, always turn out. So intentions can be appreciated for what they are in past tense. Expectations may or may not align with intentions. Sometimes we get to remember what our intentions are and know in advance what will manifest. When we realize intentions we don't like, we can choose for them to have happened and move on. When we resist choosing for them to have happened, we get embroiled in belief, disagreement, belief, disbelief, agreement, disagreement, above it, under the rug, and fail or be successful ping pong, don't we? Aliveness is something else again. Verse 16. The transformation is already here, already complete, inevitable, and in manifestation. People sometimes get hung up in mirrors about what its indications are. Either they presume that the indicators must be according to customs, traditions, or conventions, or they get hung up presuming that indicators must be counter to customs, traditions, and intentions. Actually, the transformation is within and without both. Verse 17. And what are the transformation's indicators? To those who confront them coming from belief, they are unbelievable, in direct proportion to the degree to which the mirror offset of belief fails to predict what's right here and just ahead, by reflecting what just was right here and is just behind. To those who confront them coming from experience, they can be both gee whizzers and so whats, gee whizzes and so whats, depending upon the used to-ness or absence of it associated with the particular kind of confront, as an indicator may have connected with it in the experience of a given group or individual. Also, depending upon the ability of a given group or individual to take responsibility for and process any upsets resulting from confronts that may occur. In any case, it works not to get stuck on indicators, nor upon what might be presumed to be contraindicators, regardless of one's reactions. You and I have found that out, haven't we? Verse 18. Actually, the transformation's indicators may be enticing or repugnant, again depending upon the significance one has put upon them. Again, it works to observe everything. Again, it works not to get stuck. Celebrating and or mourning is not getting stuck unless one insists upon hanging on to. Verse 19. So common sense is to be held suspect. Not rejected, just held suspect. Noticed, acknowledged, and held suspect. Got that? Good. Verse 20. We brought up Columbus and his alleged discovery. What did it mean to flatlanders? You and I might also mention the crystal set and the creation discovery, take your pick, of frequency modulation. Aha! Many radio-video messages can be conveyed on many frequencies, and we still had many stations on the one broadcast band without frequency modulation. Verse 21. Now take radio bands not as a mirror, instead take them as a glass to look through, all the time remembering the limitations of words and how analogies can be made false, and look at the nature of man. Is being human still an only? Hang out with it. Verse 22. Now tell the truth. Just how much power does one individual have anyway? What are you doing on the game board? Chapter 11. Verse 1. Where rainbows and things in the flesh place and other places are formed, and where they are dissolved, is a place called the abyss. I go there often. Actually, all of us never really leave it. It permeates everything. In the tongue called English, the words going, coming, and the terms up to, down to, into, out to, as well as many others, can be misleading. So it is for other words in other tongues. If I were to tell you what the abyss is like to me, I would mislead you. If you were to fixate upon my experience as a standard or an only. Conversely, if you were to tell me what the abyss is like to you, and I were to fixate upon your experience as a standard or an only, I would be misled. Unless, of course, in either case, you and or I should happen to get
that what's so for one is what's so experientially for the other. The key is to let the mind-held standards and onlys come and go. Do what they're going to do and not what they're not. Verse 2. Certainly it works, when one is stuck, to acknowledge it, thereby putting a minus equal to the plusness of the stuckness in its way, thereby canceling it in direct proportion of the stuckness alignment in the truth acknowledging process of the minus declaration to the plus situation to be uncreated. To do this, you and I have discovered that it is often necessary to be resolved totally. Resigned implies resistance, though it's a start. For the stuckness never to go away, if that's what it feels like. Otherwise, we have both discovered that acknowledging what's so becomes like waiting for the kettle of expectations to boil. And the wait seems interminable till it does, even if it does. If it ever does. Verse 3. Anyhow, the abyss can be a place empty and lonely as a pair of railroad tracks stretching either way to nowhere. It can be silence that sings and deadness that roars with life. It is the source of the quintessence of everything. Just when one has fully acknowledged, fully told the truth about having gotten nothing. What forms of the transformation come from the abyss? It's our choice and it's yours. Let us whisper some more. Verse 4. What of Northern Ireland? Does violence brew in the sugar offered in hospitality? Does the ghost of the Viking berserker return to haunt my cousins on both sides through the channel of the cookie dish and the sugar jar? And the war water jug? Does sugar in the tea at morning and afternoon craze the blood? Is this an agreement? Have a look. Verse 5. It has been stated by some, and unconsciously assumed by many, that much of the urban culture now existing in the United States is sexual. How is this so when the flesh place stuck puts so many price tags on plumbing? How is this so when the flesh place stuck display male and female bodies as commodities and commercially stimulating agents which fire artificial need? If the United States is to be sexual, it must be sexually balanced. From whence cometh the pelvic anger and the breast anger? Whither all the cancer? Have a look. Verse 6. You and I should ask something else of those who would acknowledge that they already journey in the abyss. First, we will present a given. All there is for anyone is freedom and consequences. Ah, the minds of the egos. Can you hear them chatter? At any rate, to play the game of the abyss, the first thing to get is that freedom and consequences are a given. Verse 7. To test this, look at the results achieved by so-called liberation movements. By putting liberation there as a have-not, they miss the point that what they're after is the modification of consequences of being, doing, and having. Coming into freedom from slavery, ego often wears the habit crusts of having been in chains. Is it not wondrous how ego can create new chains from nothing more or less than unrecognized, unacknowledged old habits? Verse 18. The previous leads to the following. Pursuit of happiness originally meant happiness-generating pursuits. What does it mean to many now? Verse 9. By making satisfaction unreachable and incredible, by sticking a carrot of satisfaction before the nose of the consumer, what have we all put upon satisfaction by making it penultimate, orgasmic, and unreachable? Is this the only way to fly, or just another way to be stuck? Have a look. Verse 10. What happens when we make something a big no-no? Might there be an alternative between making something undesirable a big no-no and a big yes-yes? Might it be possible to make it a so what? Keep looking. Hang out with it. Verse 11. Is consumerism appropriate, or is it at-effect victim-victimizer space? When many of us are still operating in mirrors from a position of not enough, what are they programming which they believe will make something unstuck? For sure, people are producing and consuming. What is legislating on this to do when all don't align with the legislation? Could we have consumers and producers as so what functions and responsibility as a that's what context? You and I and the others get to choose to create whatever. Hang out with it. Verse 12. What are the at-effect chain ethics of buying a motorized vehicle built with the chemical augmentation of 12 or so tons of the finest Appalachian coal or its equivalent, which can only carry 2 people somewhat comfortably and 1 or 2 in far less comfort, with 400 horsepower or with smog chokers a bit less, and still way more than necessary, factories next to the potentially flaming Cuyahoga River, which said vehicle is painted flaming red with deathbird striping just to drive down the park or freeway or through the mountains at less than 1/2 of its potential speed legally allowed? Hang out also with what you and I have already discovered many times the hard way, making the consumer or the producer wrong by making what they do a big no-no merely puts the problem there even more intensely than it was. Going the bang-bang you're dead revolutionary route does the same, only makes the others play cap guns for real by mirror offset. What works? Verse 13. We know how clouds move in gaseous space. We know how liquids interact in liquid space. We have rediscovered land oceans with the acknowledgement of the agreement about plate tectonics. Does it or does it not work to design dwellings and other buildings by something like ship specifications? Who discovered this? Hang out with it. Coats of arms were us versus them identifiers in the time of Charlemagne, when armor cost a great deal and hard charging was the way to solidify agreement, disagreement, ping-pong. In the lands of the free, what are heraldic shields used for? Emblems of identification upon prestige vehicles and others. What does this have to do with ego minds, creations from nothing but chain habits? Have the Amish and the Black Bumper Mennonites and their kin already brought down wisdom we could all use regarding these and other reflective surfaces? Verse 15. Can the ethical be made enticing and tempting? Is it already enticing and tempting? You and I get to choose and keep on choosing what we've chosen, don't we? Verse 16. The delightful thing about the transformation is that no one needs to be converted to it. One may shield oneself from pouring rain, and soon there is a need called thirst. One may shield oneself from too much sun, and soon there is a need for warmth. One may hide oneself from the light in darkness, and even there, lights turn on, one way or the other. Verse 17. Thus, one of the changes brought about by the transformation is the way the game board is played. Being now knows that it is always known that ego layers are costume. Therefore, being now knows that it has always known that it wears and is the frame or context for ego layers as costume or content.
This way, everything remaining the same is and was and will be utterly changed. The transformation is outside of time. Verse 18. Once in a time now mere illusion before, emergencies brought about change. Now the game is to uncreate emergencies by foresight and implementation. Verse 19. Aha, you and I can hear them, can't we? Some of those who are ego chatter stuck on have pleasure contrasted with have not pain, or have not pain pleasure pain, are clamoring bullshit again. Behind that, they possibly fear that there is a space filled with boredom if emergencies are uncreated. Indeed, there may be, and there are levels beyond that, immediately reachable. When one solves problems on lower levels, one gets to solve them on higher levels. There is joy in this beyond both hope and despair. Verse 20. Anyhow, the new competition, the new race for space, the new rivalry is to uncreate rivalry. Those who accept this already know it. Those who resist it will create its joy being thrust upon them. Everybody gets to win. Verse 21. In the myriad levels and frequencies of spaces and places, the now dance reigns through all. In the place where night and day are one, differences in doctrines are dissolved in the process of aligned experience. Verse 22. Wake in the dawn, arise in the night, set out at midday, and go walking. The flower flows myriad, as all in the flesh place remember and relive times of journeying. You and I are journeying together, experiencing life in each moment's palm frond essence, as it passes from the now shadow to the nanosecond gate of just then's domain. Transformations by John Dan Reib. Link in the description if you'd like a copy for yourself. It's about $5. It's also on Kindle, but it's nice to have a copy in your hand. This is a photo I took up in the Himalayas, walking up to Annapurna Base Camp in Nepal, 2018. Hope you enjoyed it. Happy birthday, Dad. And we'll be back to our regularly scheduled chicken philosophy rotations starting next time. All right. I hope you enjoyed Transformations. And until next time.